And as of yesterday, there's 6 of them here, I did another inquiry along the same lines. On our computers, we have Microsoft Copilot. And I have to admit, I have resisted using AI. I have some concerns about AI. But I've been using it for some other project, and I thought, well, I'm gonna plug it in and ask the questions about this matter. And so what you have there is what I pulled up yesterday. And so I asked a couple questions. I asked, wasn't the Minnesota Statute 20658 amended in 2023 to require continued use of electronic voting systems? And the answer is yes. Then I asked the question, but does this mandate apply to for electronic voting roster systems as well? Is there any information? So the question then is, that's before us, is do our statutes, by way of the 2023 amendment, mandate your continued use since you are using them? And the answer here in short form is it does not apply. And then it goes in to describe the reasons. And I'm not going to go into that in detail because we need to broaden the context here. You can look that over in your own time. You could do this yourself. I mean, you don't have to be too smart to ask a decent question. So if you go on the back page, that's really the summary of this, where the electronic voting system under statute 20656 relates to ballot counting and tabulation, and that is now mandated. However, electronic rosters in a separate section, 201.225, which has to do with voter check-in, is not mandated. So that's our answer to why we believe that you have autonomy. I asked myself the question, now, is there any evidence beyond our interpretation of the statute that would guide us about this further? Well, the statute changed in 2023, so we've had 3 years of practice under that law. Has anything happened that would actually help us interpret that law? And I identified several possible sources. One is the Secretary of State. Has the Secretary of State promulgated any explanation of the statutes that addresses this? I went on the website, I couldn't find anything. My understanding is your attorney has requested some input on that from them. I'm not aware that any has come forth. But the Secretary of State is a source to weigh in on this one way or the other. And if he does, he should do it publicly and preferably in writing. If he's gonna match what we're doing it in writing or in public. We show up in meetings and talk. So that could be a source, but I don't know what the answer is from that source. We identified Isanti County as another possible identifier of the dynamic of this thing, since they actually did raise this question and they had a discussion. And I guess there's different perspectives on what happened there. Our perspective is this. Isanti County has 19 precincts. Since 2018, 17 of those have never used the rosters, the pulpits. But 2 of those precincts have, and they're both in Cambridge. So in recent months, the matter came up as to whether the county, in conjunction with the municipalities, would purchase these poll pads for all 19 precincts. Feedback from the municipalities where there are 17 precincts was, we're not interested. From Cambridge, there was some further discussion. But my understanding is, and our understanding is, that Cambridge, on their own, decided not to continue using them. Our understanding further is that the county auditor in Isanti County represented to her board that that Cambridge has that prerogative. They could decide to use them or not, and the county could respond in kind and work with them either way, which they had already been doing. So that suggests that local autonomy exists. It begs the question, has the state informed any of those people? County board, the county auditor, the city of Cambridge? Have they been informed that they will be violating the statute if they don't? I haven't heard that. So if that doesn't come forth, that's evidence that Cambridge has autonomy. So that's outstanding, but I don't think there's any evidence there that suggests that Cambridge must continue to use them. There was some discussion about, from your attorney's letter, as to who pays. Well, who pays is immaterial to the decision of who decides to use them. So that's a side point. I'll talk about cost here in a little bit. The second context we have is Anoka County. Anoka County has been addressing this question for nearly 3 years because of us. We've raised it. We submitted many documents, made many presentations, advocating that the municipalities have autonomy. They can decide to use them or not. And when 2 of them decided not to use them, Oak Grove and Ramsey, the county did push back on Oak Grove. And that's when the felony threat letter came out in response. The county's position is that their auditor can mandate. And we disagree with that. Interesting, your attorney agrees with us on that point. The county can't mandate, and so we're on the same team there. But what's interesting about this dynamic is for 3 years, Anoka County could have told us that they're mandated by the state. They never did. They've never made that argument. To me, that's evidence that they know that they're not mandated. They do know that the tabulators are mandated. So they've never claimed, either with us, with Oak Grove or Ramsey, that you have to keep using them. And interestingly, in recent months, the county took the significant step of passing a resolution reaffirming that their county auditor is that election official that has this supreme authority to mandate use in any precinct in the county or not. So that's their position, and they put it in a resolution. So that's the legal point that's really outstanding. Not so much the one we're having here, is that question, can the county mandate? So I think I've already covered the various views we have on this. One last piece of evidence that we would submit about autonomy, and it gets into another county, and really you could call any county auditor, 85 other counties and 86 other counties, and ask them, how do you handle this? Well, Dakota County, we are aware of how they've handled their rosters. And the history on Dakota County is they had a joint powers agreement in 2018, just like you did. Theirs was a full joint powers because they shared the cost. Whereas Anoka County is, well, we'll get to that later. You're actually paying for them, but the county claims they are. Anyway, Dakota County in 2018 went into a joint powers agreement, and the majority of their municipalities joined up. That ran its course. 2023, after the amendment, to mandate continued use for whatever, Dakota County entered into a new joint powers agreement. In this case, all their municipalities signed up. And we have a copy of that agreement. So, how did that happen? Well, it happened under the county rules section of the statute that lays out the process by which counties and municipalities enter into joint ventures. And you do that with highways, you know what that's about. Well, you can do that with election stuff. Anything that's discretionary, subject to cost sharing, you need a joint powers agreement. So they did that. That joint powers agreement does not say that those that are coming in for the first time, or even those that were in it before, once you come in, you have to keep using them. There was no disclaimer. There was no notice to these people that if you decide to join up, you're going to be in this forever because of the state law. So Dakota County didn't promulgate that idea. And their termination section and all these agreements have termination sections. If that mandate was in there, what is the termination thing about it anyway? Well, you could argue, well, it's just about general terms of use. You gotta keep using them, maybe the formula changes. There was nothing in there about that distinction of the fact you gotta keep using these anyway, but we can still change the agreement. That distinction was not in there. So all of this evidence suggests to me that the standard practice and the best practice out there is the state doesn't mandate. And I'm guessing most counties don't mandate. I've heard of any other county that's taken the position Anoka County is, that they can mandate. So that's the lay of the land you're in. So there's some unknowns unresolved between the county and Oak Grove, and technically between you and the county, and Oak Grove acting on your behalf essentially. So what is your situation? Well, I kind of covered this, but I'll summarize quickly. You have this 2013 joint powers for electronic voting systems. We're not addressing that. You have the 2018 agreement for the election equipment, the rosters, the poll pads. And we're saying that's not the same as the electronic voting equipment. Stands alone, separate agreement. The county never has amended that agreement with you. If they believe that you had to keep using these things because you used them in the past, why would they not have amended your agreement to reflect that? It's not in there. You have a termination clause, and that termination is effective 7 days after you give notice. That's still in there. And that's what Oak Grove acted upon. So that kind of covers the statutory stuff about whose positions is what. The bottom line is we believe you have autonomy from both the county and the state. Costs, I'll try to address cost a little bit. The tabulator thing is a separate agreement, and that runs its course, and the county charges you certain things for your share of the cost of tabulators. That's off the table from what we're talking about here. So what we're talking about here is the relationship you have with the county about the poll pads, and you have an agreement. That agreement doesn't stipulate cost sharing. So technically, it's not a joint powers agreement under state statute. The state, because I think by statute, if you share costs, it is a joint powers agreement. So the county basically said, we'll buy them back in 2018, and they did. Well, what's happened since is in 2023, at the same time the statutes were amended for this mandate for tabulators, the state created a fund to be sent to the county and to be shared with the municipalities. This is their way of saying, well, we're mandating this stuff, we're gonna kick a little money your way. Well, it's never enough, as you know, they never covered their mandates. But they created this fund, it's called the voter fund. And you're involved in it, you have cash flow or not from it. And essentially how it's worked since 2023 is each year the state allocates a fund, they prorate it to the counties, and then the counties either have to prorate out half of it to the municipalities, or they have to obtain your approval how they're gonna use your share of the funds. Well, what happened in 2023, as they came back to all of the municipalities, they said, we wanna accumulate your funds to pay for the poll pads we're gonna buy later. And that's what's happened. So for 2023, 2024, 2025, they've aggregated the funds statewide or countywide in conjunction with their own, and that came pretty close to paying for these poll pads that they purchased, and they're gonna roll out here, I guess, for the first time in the next election. So now what does that dollar number mean? We inquired of the county by data practices, they didn't give us a response. But this is not a big deal because we can figure it out on our own. We know the numbers, we know the prorations, and our estimate is that your share of the voter funds is about little more than $500 a year. So over 3 years, it's about $1,500, or in the 2025 numbers, using the registered voter numbers, it was about $1,600. So it's not a big number, but the principle of the matter is you're paying for those. So in a way, you got a sunk cost. The fact that you paid for them does not mean that you have to use them. That's a different decision.
Sure.
So, I think that covers everything I really wanted to cover. Just to sum up, I don't know that you have any action item here on the resolution. I have to commend your attorney. You really developed that thing well. Even though we disagree with his first whereas, we think that's not a true statement. If that's true, you really covered the bases on the rest of it. So,
Very thorough.
so a lot of my notes were all, well, this doesn't work just because of the first sentence, but if he was right, I think it all worked. So I give you credit for doing a thorough job on this.
Appreciate it.
And he may totally disagree with our analysis anyway, but just to end up, we would recommend that you not adopt that particular proposed resolution because we believe it's giving away what you actually have as autonomy. We would ask you consider going back to paper. We know it's more than just a technical decision or cost decision. There's other factors going on here, but we think it's worth a thorough look. And our view is that if you did that, you'd be going back to the pre-2018 status, where you would cooperate with the county, and they cooperate with you. And they have to provide those books now as a backup anyway. So it kind of begs the question, is it really gonna cost any more money for them to just not bring the poll pads out, or not to have you use the poll pads, and just use the paper rosters? So we don't think that's a cost factor. And then the last point I'd make is find out what your 2026 voter fund allocation is. And you have the right to tell the county, we're gonna make that decision, you send us some money, and you can use that for any election-related cost. It's not tied to poll pads, it's not tied to tabulators or anything. You can pay election judges or whatever from that. So that's kind of a future thing. So I'll stop there and address any thoughts or questions you have.
I have one quick question. Do you have any examples of any municipalities anywhere in the state that has been using digital poll pads and gone back to paper?
The only one I cite is Cambridge.
But they haven't actually gone back to it yet.
I don't know that it has gone through an election cycle, so I can't say that it has been completed. We've not done a survey statewide. I think some counties and county auditors would probably find what we're talking about rather novel. I think they probably have their practice, and I don't think some of this stuff even crosses their mind probably.
Did possibly Crow County?
I don't know. I know that they were looking at a number of election-related issues 2-3 years back when I was tracking that, but I don't know currently.
I tried to find something on it and I can't find, I'm looking for one example of somebody that's been using digital poll pads and said, nope, we're not gonna spend money anymore, and went back to paper, even just for the financial standpoint, not even an election integrity thing, just so that there's an example. I can't find anything. So I thought maybe you would, but to me, I mean, me personally, I have a lot of concern over election integrity. But I also have to look out for the township first and foremost. So that's kind of why, I appreciate you guys coming in and presenting. I take everything that Derek's ever emailed me, and I've watched them, I've read them. I'm looking for that piece of information that makes me, as one of 5 people voting up here, feel more comfortable with risking making that statement. Mm-hmm. To me, Derek had made a statement when he was here last time that looking to send a message to Anoka County. That's what I think the resolution that Mark drafted did, without putting the township in a potential liable situation. And that's what we were trying to accomplish with that resolution, was to say, look, we don't want electronic poll pads. We want to go back to paper poll pads. But if there is something that we don't see, that's a violation of law, that this is our out, this is our safety net to where we can't be held down and said and be said, look, you passed a resolution that you were getting rid of them. That's it. And it kind of gives us that little bit of a leeway in there. But I think that's why that resolution was drafted the way it was to send a message, but yet not 100% put the finances of the township at risk. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
It's slightly addressing your original question of, is there a,
Like the